Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to our panel, Solitary Confinement, Oppression, and Racial Disparities in the Prison Within a Prison. My name is Shandre Delaney, and I'll be moderating today. I'm with the Human Rights Coalition Fed Up, which is a prisoner and family-led organization. We operate under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We believe that once a prisoner is adjudicated, he does not lose his human rights or his civil rights. Most of our work is done working with solitary confinement and the issues that we have in solitary confinement. For those who don't know, solitary confinement is a prison within a prison. It's a 23-1 lockdown. It's supposed to be, but sometimes it's 24. They claim that the worst of the worst is thrown in there, but that's not true all the time. People are thrown in there for disobeying an order, which is like the most used reason for putting people in solitary confinement. People who are revolutionary type people, political prisoners are thrown in there. Trans people are thrown in there just for the fact that they are trans. Today, you're going to learn about a campaign that we have going on called the Solidarity, Not Solitary campaign. Also, there is a campaign going on within Allegheny County to ban solitary confinement at the Allegheny County Jail. We're going to start off with a video just to tell you a little bit about solitary, and then we'll move on to the speakers. You can start the video.
Oh, I will start it. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Whitney, we can't actually hear it at the moment.
I'm glad that you let me know.
There are a couple check boxes that you might need to click when you're sharing. So yes, thanks, Austin. Yeah, some people in the chat definitely know what's up. So when you're sharing, just make sure to click share sound and optimize for video.
If you all want to chat amongst yourselves while I figure out how that works, that would be fine. Okay. Okay, I have to reopen the video, but we got that. Are you all looking at my whole process now?
In 1990, the UN called for the abolition of solitary confinement. And more recently, in 2011, a UN expert said that the practice could amount to torture. So what is going on in the minds of those in solitary? Hi everyone, Julia here for D News. Solitary confinement is the practice in so-called supermax prisons of holding inmates in a single cell for 22 or 23 hours a day for months or years on end. While some think the practice makes prisons safer and reduces violence, it may make prisoners more at risk for mental health problems. Some estimates say the number of inmates held in what is called SHU, special housing units, might be as high as 80,000 across the U.S. While it used to be used as a short-term punishment to crack down on violence, prisons now routinely use the practice. While stays used to be only a few days, some prisoners have been in solitary for years. The typical SHU cell isn't much bigger than your closet, like 6 by 10 feet, with only a small bed, a sink, a toilet, and social contact is kept to a bare minimum. They receive their food through a slot in the door and very rarely have video conferences with family. There's nothing to do but stare at the fluorescent lights on the ceiling that never turn off. But what kind of life is that, and what does it do to the mind? Humans are very social creatures. One study published in the journal Perspectives on Psychological Science found that loneliness and social isolation can have just as much of a threat to health as obesity. Other studies, like one published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, found that it has serious psychological effects as well, like inducing anxiety, aggression, and memory impairment. The researchers think it has to do with an enzyme in the brain. 5-alpha reductase type 1 is important for the production of the hormone allopregnanolone, which regulates levels of stress. In socially isolated mice, the researchers found that the production of that enzyme was reduced by 50%, which could mean more stressful hormones in the brain. Another study in the journal Nature Neuroscience found changes in the prefrontal cortex of socially isolated mice. The cells in the brain that make white matter made less of it after 8 weeks of isolation. This lessening of white matter production in the prefrontal cortex impacted emotional and cognitive behavior. The animals couldn't socialize as well when they met new mice. But total social isolation and sensory deprivation, like solitary confinement, is really difficult to study. You might know about the famous rhesus monkey experiments in the 50s, where baby monkeys were taken away from their mother and given fake wire moms. Well, the same researchers studied how isolation affects the monkeys, where baby monkeys were separated from their mothers and placed in what's known as a pit of despair. Basically, it's a metal container they couldn't climb out of. After months of this solitary existence, they exhibited mental distress and showed signs of full-blown depression. It doesn't sound like something you'd want to do to a human being, yet that's what it seems like is going on inside of America's prisons. One review of the literature found that prisoners experience a wide range of ill effects from the experience. One study found that a great majority of inmates in solitary suffered from serious psychological trauma. 91% of the prisoners sampled suffered from anxiety and nervousness. More than 80% suffered headaches, lethargy, and trouble sleeping, and 70% feared impending breakdown. There could even be physical damage as a result of psychological stress. Some inmates turn to self-harm and lash out in other physically harmful ways. The lack of sunlight and exercise can lead to other kinds of physical distress. All of this puts a lot of strain on a person. According to psychiatrist Terry Coopers, prisoners in isolation account for just 5% of the total prison population, but nearly half of its suicides. Some research shows that it doesn't make prison any less violent of a place. One recent study published in the journal Quantitative Criminology found that solitary confinement made prisoners no more or less likely to commit violent crimes when released back into the general population. So that kind of takes the meat out of the argument that it makes prisons safer. One study published in the journal Criminal Justice and Behavior found that removing mentally ill prisoners from solitary confinement and adequately treating their illness actually reduced prison violence. To learn more about what it's like for those who've survived the ordeal, our sister show Seeker tells the story of one man who spent over 2/3 of his life in solitary confinement.
Woodfox was held in solitary confinement for decades. While Wallace and King were eventually released, Woodfox remained incarcerated. In total, he spent over 40 years in prison, almost all of which in solitary confinement.
What do you think about solitary confinement? Let us know down in the comments below. Keep coming back here to D News. We've got new episodes every day of the week.
All right. Just so you will learn more about solitary confinement, our speakers are going to tell you about their experiences. First is going to be Carrington Keys. Carrington, can you tell them about your experience?
Sure. Like my mom first said, they don't like people that are into revolutionary stuff and studying Black culture or doing things that's they feel as though it's waking up the masses of the people. And I started experiencing problems in prison and going to solitary confinement mainly through the literature that I was receiving in a group of men that I used to be with, and I used to organize and have book clubs and stuff. And altogether, I probably spent about 11 years in solitary confinement. Man, my experiences there was crazy. I'm still affected by it to this day out here on the streets, because it's like even when you come home, you isolate yourself from people. And yeah, it creates sensory deprivation, blackouts, all type of stuff. And the things that I seen while I was there, you know, for other people that not everybody is affected the same way, but everybody that goes to solitary confinement is affected by it. Some people break down faster than others. and some people last long, but still, you know, hide their pain. But it's definitely something that's vicious. And what I tried to do during my time in solitary confinement was read, work out, write books, and just try to keep my mind intact, and share conversations and knowledge with people that have the same interests, and try to you know, keep people's minds intact. And I met a lot of guys that was in the hole, I mean, like for 20, 30 years too. And you would be surprised how strong they are and how much talent that they have too. Cause it's really designed to like break the human soul, I believe, you know. But it's a lot of great minds that came out of solitary confinement too. Cause it's either gonna make you worse or it's gonna make you better. That's all I can add on for now.
Well,
Is there
go ahead. Did you have?
I was gonna say, like as far as the questions, is there any questions any topics that I need to touch on specifically?
I was gonna do a round of questions after all of you all speak. So,
Okay.
Yeah. But what I was gonna say is, any given day, there's 80,000 people in solitary confinement all around the country. Right now, because of COVID, the whole system is locked down. So everything that he's talking about experiencing, and that people are, you know, that they're saying that people experience in solitary confinement, everybody's going through it right now. I mean, with Human Rights Coalition, we receive so many letters from people that have never had been in solitary, and now that they have to be confined because of COVID, the whole system is experiencing a lot of the mental breakdowns. So I just wanted to add that in.
And I want to add on before you start. Most of my time that I spent in solitary confinement it wasn't with another person than myself. So I know how bad it is for to have to be in prison right now, to have to be in a cell all day with another person. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, next we're going to hear from Dana, underrepresented class that you don't hear a lot about women being in solitary, but she's a woman who survived solitary. So Dana, could you tell us your story and your experiences?
Yes, let me say good afternoon to everybody. Karen and my brother, you know, as y'all was talking about it, I got and I normally don't, but got really caught up in my feelings, especially seeing the film, because it brought back some memories that I hadn't revisited in a long time. Sorry, get myself together. So this is why I do what I do, and why I must continue to do what I do. So let me tell you who Dana is first, if I can. Dana Lomax Williams, she's a wife, she's a mother, she's an advocator, she's an organizer, she's a motivational speaker, she's an educator, and she's also a formerly impacted woman. What does that mean? I have 25 years on and off of incarceration. Dana also advocates on many different levels and dimensions. She's passionate about being a voice for the voiceless, and she's a core member of the West Philly Participatory Defense Hub. She is a member of Human Rights Coalition. She's an official visitor of Prison Society. She's also the president of CABI, Delaware County chapter, CABI, Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration. She's a consultant for the Incarcerated Women's Group with the ACLU. She's also works for CLS, Community Legal Services, and prior to COVID, she was visiting prisons frequently to let those behind the walls know that they are not forgotten and not to lose hope. She also believes in and advocates for second chances and speaks about the injustices in the judicial, the penal, and the prison systems. She was the whistleblower in exposing how the men guards were illegally searching women behind the walls, and which was not only against our rights, but also a violation of our temple. And now today in the state of Pennsylvania, men are prohibited from violating us women. She has been advocating for the past several years, and each year matriculating to the next level in her advocacy. She's a CPS worker, a CRS worker, which is basically a certified peer specialist and a certified peer recovery specialist. And it's Dana's life mission to assist those formerly incarcerated with those with mental health issues and other barriers to become and stay self-sufficient, providing them with services to ensure their well-being and security and stable. So I went to the hole because like I wasn't a troublemaker. I just walking down the compound one day, the guard asked me to come here. I complied because I didn't want any smoke. I didn't want any problems. I was there to do my time and to go. That was it. Okay, so I'm walking down the compound and he said, turn around. So that he said, so I could frisk you. I also was in the military. So somebody would have been like, oh, okay. But me, I was like, frisk. I said, you mean search me, touch my body? He was like, yes. I was like, no. And if you can see how big I'm not, he was probably like, well, who the hell she thinks she is? No. So I got thrown in the hole and kept getting thrown in the hole because I refused to have a male guard touch my body. I felt like when I got arrested, they had to call a female officer from a whole nother county to come and search me. So now I'm on state grounds and that y'all could just do what y'all want. Like, no, I don't think so. So I kept getting thrown in the hole until finally, and Carrington was so bright when, when I was getting thrown in the hole, I always had a cellmate. So what I did, because it's either going to make you or break you. And it's so sad because it's so true. Only the strong do survive, because it ain't no joke. Like, you don't see, it's like a dungeon. When we took a shower, I was searched. First of all, it's me and another person. But I had to search for her. Okay, in front of another female. Although we had a relationship, so she will always turn or whatever. But we had to be searched. Then you handcuffed through the aperture. They say the hole is called an aperture. You put your hands through the aperture to get to go to the shower. Then I'm showering in the cage. Like, are you freaking for real? I was showered and handcuffed in the cage. Yeah. High wash up. You improvise and you be creative in cuffs. Okay. That's it. So having to go through this all because I refused to have a male guard search me. It's like, I couldn't understand it. So finally, my mom then was like, what is going on? Why are you? And I explained to them, because of course I wasn't getting my mail. That's another thing. So many different challenges you face by being in the hole. That's why it's so important that we check up on our kin mates, because they if they see that you have support, then they're more liable to slack up a little bit until you put pressure on them. But having to go through that, I promised that. So my parents was like, what's going on? So I told them, he was like, are you serious? And my dad said, what do you want to do? I said, Dad, I'm gonna be a voice for the voices. I knew I had a court date, but I thought about these women and certain things that was going on with the sexual harassment. And then when those men search you, they feel your breasts and all that. No, what? You must got me. What? I think not. And I couldn't understand how these women was letting them do this. But then I had to put myself in their position, which was real hard. But then you thought they had to be here. They had to live here. So it's like, whatever. Hey, that's what y'all want to do, whatever. Probably get them get a little free couple cookies or whatever to say the case may be. But I was like, no, this is crazy. So if you will allow me to, I would like to share, a documentary that ACLU did. is very brief. Let me see.
I engaged in criminal behavior, which resulted in me going to court, and that's when I began to really learn and understand what actually happens behind the walls. Once I got incarcerated, I was told I was going to be searched by a male officer, and when he explained that he was going to search me, I was actually perplexed. I said, you mean touch my body? He said, yes. I said no, and that didn't work out good. I ended up actually getting put into solitary confinement numerous times because I refused to let a male guard search me. I look at the women who have been violated all over again, such as myself. That's violating us all over again. And if you don't comply, then you are punished. So if you don't accept to being violated, when you have been already violated, right, you're punished. I felt helpless. I just felt powerless. And it was like, well, something has to change. And because I'm a reader and I like to educate myself, when I got into the state prison at Muncie, I had read everything there was to read because there was nothing else to do. And it did not say male guards can search you. What it said was you will be searched by the same gender. So once I did that, I knew I had the support of my family, my church family. I went full-fledged. I started writing a prison society. I wrote Lycoming County newspaper. I reached out to HRC and any other organization that would listen. And when the prison seen that, I think that caused them to lighten up, if you will, a little bit, because they say, oh, she has support. You know, I would do it all over again, going back and forth to solitary confinement, having the women, you know, us demonstrate power. I told them, refuse to be searched. And so by doing that, and of us kept doing that, now in the state of Pennsylvania, no male guard is allowed to search a female incarcerated person. My name is Dana Lomax Williams. My father said it only takes one. And my job, I think, is to, you know, I have to be a voice for the voiceless.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. This story that Dana is given it's sad but it's not unique. It's happening to women all over the US that are being put into solitary. It's not a unique story. Were you finished or did you want to continue?
No, that's why I also get so angry, because it's 2 female prisons and there's not enough support for the women. And who I'm mad at, glad you asked, the damn men. And don't take it personal, because it is what it is. It has over 26 men prisons. It's 2 freaking female prisons. And I feel like this. The women, first of all, if it wasn't for the women, the men wouldn't be out. We are the nurturers and the cultivators. We're the movers and the shakers. Not saying the men not, but that's what we do. And we play a very major part in men being released because of how we move. And I feel like the women don't have that support. If you go into the female prisons, it's filled up with women. Going to the male prisons is filled up with women. That's the problem. We need to change that narrative. We need to get the women need more support. I don't understand the men go through stuff, but the women go through just as much. And dig this. We as the nurturers and the cultivators, if you take the women out the house, that changes the dynamics of the home. Men do too. I'm not talking about men, no, I'm talking about the women. So I feel like it needs to be more support and more, just so much more for the women than what it is. Because I feel like it's nothing for women. For real. It really is. And I think it's very important for the men to stand behind and start supporting the women. Like for real. Hardly any programs, all of them for men. You know, so yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Reverend Chris Jimenez.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Reverend Chris Jimenez. I serve as the pastor of Lombard Central Presbyterian Church in West Philadelphia, and I'm also executive director of Healing Communities Pennsylvania, which is a faith-based reentry and criminal justice reform organization. My experience with solitary, I actually come from this from a little bit different perspective. Prior to my incarceration, I was actually a federal law enforcement officer and a career Marine. And so when I came into prison, I really didn't have a choice. I picked up 3.5 years of Fed time due to my drug addiction, and they immediately said, because of my background in law enforcement, that I needed to go into, they called it segregated housing, but it's the same thing. If it's 23-1 and you're by yourself in a cell for and they don't treat you any different, and the guards, torture you just like they torture everybody else. They do things like choose not to feed you, choose not to, let you get your shower. They say it's 23-1, but I was actually in a cell one time for 14 days straight, not let out for any exercise, not let out for any shower, for anything. They feed you one way in the mess hall, and then they feed you another way in solitary. So it was, basically, I tell people all the time that my experience with the humiliation of solitary, along with all of the things that they talk about, the mental health and the trauma issues, that I actually have more trauma from 9 months in solitary than most people have, that I have from four combat tours in the Marine Corps. And that most people have in their life. There are still, interestingly enough, Carrington was talking about how he was still affected. I remember some things like I used to always wear my keys on my belt prior to incarceration. I can no longer do that. I cannot listen to the sound of jingling keys. Now you'll find my keys. I believe my keys are somewhere all the time because I'm always throwing them in a bag or I'm throwing them somewhere because I can't have them on me. I can't stand the sound. And I've been home going on 26 years. I listen. I was not too long ago. My partner and I were in a restaurant. This is prior to COVID, so it's been a while. But I think our last anniversary prior to COVID, we were in a restaurant, we were eating, and we're in a really nice restaurant, that we paid considerable amount of money for. And she was having to tell me to slow down because I am still very, very used to eating in 5 minutes. Because when you're in solitary, when they come back to get the tray, if you're not done eating, you have to give your tray up. You learn to eat very rapidly because and I've seen them times where they've come back to somebody, when they're messing with somebody, they'll come back to your cell a minute after they give you the tray, and if you don't give the tray up, they're coming in your cell with an extraction team, so if you tell them I'm not ready yet, I'm not done eating, they're coming in the cell with an extraction team, and now you might end up in restraints, you might end up, with no mattress, you might end up, naked, what little pictures or mail you got, gone, that, they'll do that to you just because they brought you a tray a minute ago, they brought you a tray a minute later, and now they want your tray back a minute later, whether you got to eat it. So you learn how to, like, when you get your food, to scarf it down. So that you can, you won't be hungry anymore. They won't come get your tray 2 minutes later. And this is the kind of stuff that, and I, in prison, I wasn't a revolutionary. I was the one that was trying to be understanding of the plight of the staff, which is all BS. There's just, there are just people who like to torture other people. And, anytime you take, I know some of you have probably heard of the experiment from, probably 30 years ago where they took some kids from an Ivy League school and made half of them guards and half of them, half of them incarcerated persons. And within 3 days, it was supposed to be a multi-week experiment. When within 3 days, they had to stop the experiment because, the guards were torturing the people who were incarcerated. So we have got, that's just one. We give people power over other people, and the next thing you know, people take advantage of that power. And so it is still, like I said, for me, it is still, I have nightmares about it still 26 years later. And it is why we're working so hard to change this. The four of us that are on this panel, we've all organized together in some way, shape, or form, because we know that this is just wrong. We know that there is nothing rehabilitative about solitary. We know that people are being sent home straight out of solitary with no treatment. There are people who are being put back in the street who were just, isolated for months or years and have had very limited human contact, and now we're putting you back on the street, with no treatment and no and no way of no recourse. And solitary is used for just about anything. It's used for arbitrary rule violations. It's, a lot of times people think that people are placed into solitary confinement because of, they must have done some kind of violent act. That's less than 5% of people that are placed in segregated housing. Again, Shandre said it, people that are LGBT and especially trans folks are put in just for being trans. Women are put in there all the time, as Dana talked about, just because they refuse advances from male guards. People are put in for just arbitrary real, you go through this door today, but you're going to go through that door tomorrow, and we didn't even bother to tell you we changed doors, but now we're throwing you in the hole. It's not a big issue in Pennsylvania because we don't have a lot of private prisons, but in states who have a lot of private prisons, where part of the keeping them full is about, making sure that incarcerated citizens get a lot of infractions. We see a lot of that kind of arbitrary stuff that, what do you mean that I'm supposed to, this was okay yesterday, but it's not okay today. And so now you're throwing me in the hole. We see, but you don't have to be in a private prison for that to happen. It happens all the time, just about. And for individuals who are seen as leaders, for individuals who are seen as organizers inside the prison, there's a target walking. Carrington talked about it. There's a target walking around on your back. And that is the one weapon that the system has against you, is to place you in solitary and just sort of leave you there to rot. And it could be for the smallest thing. There was a case a couple of years ago. I was just watching it on YouTube the other day. It's a case of a couple of years ago of a man who was thrown into solitary for 2.5 years, and never even brought to trial. He had a DUI. It wasn't. He was just thrown in, and supposedly into the drunk tank, in a county prison in Florida, and forgotten about for 2.5 years. He literally had to pull his own tooth out of his head. That's how much they had forgotten him. So much so that they, he ended up winning $15 million when they let him out, in a case. But it's horrible that you would think that this is what we do to people, because we can, and so, one of the things that I always lead people at is, think about when we do this, when we treat people like animals, and then 90%, 95% of those people that we treat like animals are coming home at some point. And so we have to ask ourselves as a society, what do we want when individuals come home? Do we want them to be successful? Do we want them to successfully reintegrate back to society? Or do we want people who are more traumatized, more hardened, more antisocial, and worse than they were when they went to prison? And our current system, particularly with the way we overuse solitary, and Pennsylvania is huge for that. We're huge for overdoing everything when it comes to incarceration, but we really are huge when it comes to solitary. What do we think that is going to happen when individuals come home? We've had individuals who come home with a lot of care. A lot of us who've been through this are doing well, but when we tell you what we live with at night, what it's like to have nightmares about what we experienced. You know, I'm lucky if I get a good night's sleep about 4 nights a week, you know, because of my past. And, you know, it's kind of wholly unfair, but that's, you know, I mean, that's kind of my story and what we're currently fighting for when it comes to trying ending the overuse of solitary in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that solitary confinement is a public health issue. Just like he said, they're putting people right back out on the streets after they have tortured them for years on end. And that creates a public health issue. Now, if you want people to come home and be rehabilitated, then you have to do things that actually rehabilitate people. Putting people in cages and then threatening, harassing, starving, and whatever is not the way for us to have a better society. I wanted to move on to, at this time, if people have questions, you can start putting them in the chat and then I will raise them up to the speakers. I did want to just have a conversation between the speakers about some of the conditions that are in solitary confinement, because it's not like you're not in this, you know, it's not a nice place. It might not be clean, you know, and you're down there, you're mixed in with people who have mental health issues and all kind of things. So I just wanted to, for you all to kind of talk about the conditions that are there in solitary that create some of these issues.
Well, the conditions for the women, for us, what I like when we got visits. Well, we were supposed to be having visits, but I never was able to get a visit. My husband then would come and something will always happen. It would say, make up something, but which means that they had to clean. You know, they had a couple long-termers, bless her heart. They were the you know, the block cleaners, so they would clean whenever it was supposed to have visits. But it was nasty. But I really didn't go out. You know, if I didn't have to, you know, take a shower, yes. But sometimes it got to the point where it was better for me to shower inside. I just tell my roommate, you know, she would just, you know what I mean, you know, flip over, you know, look at the wall or whatever. You know what I mean. We would just have to give each other that our own privacy, if you will, because when we would shower, found out that the guards see you as you were showering, right? So I was like, no, forget that. I would put cars up in my so that was an issue too, you know. So it was always something, but you know, you just did the best that you could with what you had. You're not gonna give you nothing to clean with. So I would use, like, we would use, you know, you become very creative. Let me say that, very creative.
Yes. Was you finished, Dana? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. The conditions was very harsh. Where I was at, one of the places I was at was in Camp Hill. I was there twice, once for 3 years and once for like a year and a half in SMU there. And man, it was crazy. Like, I seen people get starved to death. Man, and they had openly racist guards that let you know what white supremacist group they belong to. And we wasn't surprised. That's how I knew Trump was going to win the presidency, because in my eyes, them was the type of people that was going to be voting for him, because they made it known, like they listened to the one white guy from Pennsylvania. What the hell is his name? He has a radio show in Northeast Pennsylvania, but in Lower. Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. They listen to Rush Limbaugh on the radio, Fox News, all of that. That's their source of media. But this is what at Camp Hill, and they would specifically target out people that to let you know, like me, like I consider myself as a Black nationalist, and I knew a lot of other brothers that did as well. So having like that type of label on you, they would try to start trouble with me whenever I come out the cell, and I only could come out for a shower, law library, you know, the things that they let you out for, like you said, visits, and I ain't want no visits. I maybe got one. My mom might have came once I was on administrative custody, but for years wasn't no visit, so I wasn't coming out for that unless it was the U.S. Marshals coming to visit me or something. But man, it was crazy. But they used to try to provoke me whenever I came out the cell, and they did that to a lot of people so that they could beat us up in handcuffs and stuff. They tried to get us to fight them, and then the only methods that we had to fight them back was either through try to grab one of them through the food slide or something. It was crazy. But it's a lot of crazy things going on in solitary confinement, and the conditions is bad from the hygiene to like you said, getting cleaning supplies. They'll put you in a cell with blood and everything in it, and then won't give you nothing. You only get a bar of soap once a week. You got to use that for everything. One little green bar of soap. It's crazy. But that's all I'm gonna add on. It's so much more I can think of, but.
Reverend Chris, you were in the feds. Was that any different than the state? Dana and Carrington were in the state. Was that any different being in the feds in the solitary?
No, not really. It's basically the same. You know, I said the playbook, every system has the same playbook. And that was, you know, I mean, they may, and of course, this is, you know, understanding that this was, and I think Karen and a couple of the other guys talk about it, those of us who did time a while ago, or were doing time a while ago, before email, before, you know, they could isolate you even more, you know, before families were calling the prison every day, and, you know, and emailing and contacting the media. When, you know, I you know, when I went to prison right before all of the effects of the 94 crime bill took place. And so, you know, which was during a time where nobody really cared, you know, politicians didn't, nobody cared about criminal justice the way they care about it now. And so, you know, if you went to prison, you were just considered the worst of the worst. And so they could do pretty much whatever they wanted to you, because you were, to them, you were nothing more than an animal. And, you know, I mean, you weren't even a number, you were just an animal. And so, you know, but the playbook, I think, is pretty much the same. You know, it is just about finding ways to, you know, to harm people, no matter why they're there, you know. And I really think a lot of times, you know, I can remember I had never even met this guy before, you know, never even met this particular guard before. And, you know, his thing was he would take the tray, and when they would open up the aperture to slide the tray in, he would make sure he spit in it. No, he and I never had a run-in. We'd never seen each other before, never knew any. So, but I was just the one he wanted to spit in today. You know, and so of course I'm not eating somebody else's spit, so that meant I didn't eat lunch that day. You know, and that's the kind of just, and this is what I'm saying. I mean, we're not, and now the whole system is going through this. You know, the entire system is going through this because, as we talked about with COVID, everybody's locked down. You know, 23-1, and you know, it is all the little. Trust me, I can tell you right now, every little guard with every little petty grievance against every incarcerated person, because they're all in vulnerable states, you know, is using that to get back at everybody, you know. So it's, you know, I mean, it just is what it is, you know, and there's nothing rehabilitative about this. There's nothing that makes this more safe, having people in the cages within a cage. And there's, you know, there's nothing that's making anybody any safer by doing this. You know, I mean, we cannot make anyone rehabilitated if we're taking away their humanity even more.
in Pennsylvania that I know of, I mean, there have been people in solitary confinement up to like 40 years. And I know that they have a certain hearing. I'm not sure what the hearing is for you to get out of solitary. And I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the reasons that they use to keep people in solitary all these years?
It's a play. They have a playbook like the Reverend said. They just use the same language every time. They'll say you're a threat to general population, you're high risk. That's the sum of it. You're a threat to all inmates in general population, you're a high risk, this and that. And the original charge that you could have went to the hole for might have been not standing for count. But now you're a threat to everyone based upon these rule violations. But now, they're using this pandemic, and it's really, man, I can imagine what it's like, because they don't know, the guards don't know how to run a prison by themselves. They need the inmates to do the work. They're used to being like slave masters, just sitting back, letting the inmates do all the work. So I know it's probably hell in there. Just from the letters I've been getting and the phone calls, I know it is.
Carrington, when you went in, you were 18. So I would like just for you to tell them how at 18 being in solitary, and also he was at the Allegheny County Jail at that time. So their history in solitary is not a very good one.
Yes. Yes. When I went to jail, I was 18 years old, and I ended up going to the solitary confinement for the first time in the county jail a day before my 19th birthday. I got into it with a correctional officer. He put me on cell restriction for having 2 mattresses. So I cussed him out one day, and he came in my cell at dinner time one time and decided to kick me in my nuts. And yeah, he provoked me into a fight. And then when I gave him what he wanted, he said, I'll see you in court. He ran downstairs. Everybody was like, oh, we seen what he did. We'll be your witnesses and stuff. Ain't nobody show up in court for me though, but they were cheering me on, get him. And I ended up going to they put me on a permanent lockdown in the county jail. Every time I went to the little hearing for administrative custody, they said they was never letting me out. So by the time, about a year later, when I went to trial and got sent upstate, I was in Western for about a week or two, Western Penitentiary, and they sent me to the hole at Camp Hill, because I ended up getting into it with the guards the guards that was taking me to Camp Hill. They was talking to everybody real crazy and real cussing at us and stuff, and wasn't nobody saying nothing, like they was scared to speak up. So I spoke up and said something. So when I got to Camp Hill, they had a little trip for me. As soon as I got there, I never got to go to any orientation block or any of that. They sent me straight to the hole and let me out a few months later, straight to a block. Man. But yeah, being young, going in there like that, and it was people in there, like I seen in the comment section about inmates, juveniles being in solitary confinement. They were doing that back in the day. Some of my friends that was 14 and 15, they was in there, and some of them was 13 years old. So even with Act 33 saying 14 and up, they was charging people. That was my one friend, Mario Wall. He was 13 years old when he went to prison for something that he didn't even do. But they don't care about your age, and they'll treat a baby like an adult, and they'll put you in that hole, and they starve you, like Chris was saying. and you never know that, and they come and get our food fast. They only give you a little bit and then they come right back to get it. So you try to stuff it down. I still do it to this day. People be looking at me like I'm crazy because I be eating like a savage because I'm still feeling like the slave master is gonna come and take my food away. And I be having to slow down. And well, that's really it.
Before I start taking the questions from the chat, did Dana or Chris, did you want to add anything or have any comment?
You know what? I do. I would like to say something. Okay, I feel like this. You're already locked up, right? We being punished for whatever. I felt like I might have did what they said I did. I might have did that, right? But I'm not who they say I am. So the judge already sentenced me. Then I go to prison, and I'm being punished all over again. Imagine, I remember Miss Yvonne Newkirk, her brother just passed away. I remember her getting there, she's in fear, her daughter who's at SCI Muncie, you know, because of everything that's going on. Her brother passed away of COVID. And I remember her giving this analogy at an event that we were at. She said, imagine being in your bathroom. Now, depending on you, like my upstairs bathroom it has a shower tub, you know, a sink, toilet, mirrors, right? So it's not very big, you know. Imagine y'all being in that space, and everything that you own is in that space, right? And if you're lucky, maybe you have a little square window. Maybe you don't. If you're lucky, maybe you have a little plastic mirror on above your sink. Maybe you don't. But imagine having that space, having to share that space with another individual, right? Then if it get overcrowded, imagine having to share that space with another individual on a boat. What a boat looks like, a long plastic container, I call it, that looks like a canoe, real long. And if you're lucky, you may get a mattress. If not, you'll be sleeping that joint hard and all. So you having to be on a boat and a person have to go to the bathroom, you're smelling whatever they doing, right? And you better face the other way so you don't have to look at them. So, but even just with one person, imagine three people having to share that space. That is freaking crazy. When Miss Yvonne gave this analogy, I was like, damn, was she there with us? You know what I mean? Because that's just exactly at times how, you know, I had to live. That's all I want to say, Shandre. Thank you.
Do you have any comments, Dr. Chris?
I think, you know, I think it's not even, it's even so much about the spaces as it is the lack of human contact. You know, I mean, my time in solitary had, you know, I never had a cellmate, but, you know, the sort of just being left with your own thoughts, not, you know, no form of any way of distracting your mind or anything, you know, anything like that. And the long-term effects that has on someone's mental health, you know, so not, you know, to have everybody in my personal business, but my wife and I separated not long before COVID started. And so I'm living by myself for the first time in a really long time. And when COVID began and everything started shutting down, you know, it was, I mean, I had a whole house to walk around in. But still, it was just the idea of being in that level of isolation by yourself is not a pleasant feeling. And it's to me, and I know it probably would have been easier had I not done that time in solitary, you know. But it was still, you know, I remember having a lot of nightmares early, you know, at the height of the pandemic. And, you know, and of course, knowing when you do this work and you know that all these other people are still are experiencing this system wide, it's, you know, it's just a reminder that this is what we're doing to people. It is why, you know, the UN Commission on Human Rights called it torture. It's torture. People, we're social creatures. We're not designed to be by ourselves that long. We're not designed to be without human contact for that long. You know, so we just got to do this better. This isn't working.
Okay, I will start asking questions in the chat. First one, I guess that's for you, Dr. Chris, because I don't know. What program or where was the source of the video? What's the source of the video that we played at the beginning?
Oh, it was on YouTube, but it was from one of the Discovery channels did it. It was a short vignette that they had online, but it really accurately described the mental health effects of solitary. So that's where it was. But it was on YouTube. There's lots of good ones. If you go on YouTube and just, you know, search effects of solitary confinement, you'll find a lot of videos. That was just a short one that was really good.
This question is for all the panelists. It said, could the panelists who were in solitary talk about the mental health resources that were available to them? How did they find hope and keep going? Were they visited by chaplains? If so, were those encounters helpful?
What mental resource? None. What? Are you kidding me? They don't even give you food, baby. What? Talk about what? Well, let me speak for myself. Absolutely none. Because they felt like they already thought I was crazy because they're like, okay, now this chick is down here, right? And she's still trying to sneak letters out. She's still trying to, I sure was. If a roommate would leave, then I would ask them, look, when you go, send this to my folks. Because they wasn't telling your folks nothing. So no, it wasn't nothing. What kept me going was prayer. I would have prayer with my roommates that was there and wasn't there. Okay, so if you wasn't there, I made one be there. Okay, you just become creative to keep your mind strong. Reading materials. And then I've always been a challenger. That's probably why I faced a lot of challenges. You know, challenge everything, always writing. So that's how I cope with it, through prayer, doing Bible study. Yes. You know, and the prayers of my family and ancestors. And that's how I got through, because guess what? I don't know any other way that I would have gotten through.
Mental health services, none. They came to your cell once a week, I believe, and asked you, are you okay? And if you wasn't okay, what were they going to do? Make it worse for you. If you even start talking like you, if you had if you showed them that there was any concern, they'll treat you like you're suicidal and put you in a suicide vest. So there was really no, it's a scam. Like the best free job they get is to be a mental health counselor there or a psych, because you don't have to do anything but make rounds. Ask everybody, are they okay? Because they may have changed a little bit now, but no, it was next to none.
What about for you, Dr.?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't even know what that was. And what's even more of an issue is that when individuals come home or they go into reentry programs or step down, or or even if they're just transitioning back to general population, there's nothing in general population, nothing available even in general population to help you, because all it's going to do is end up getting you set back, as Kerrigan said, back to on a suicide hold. And then even when you come home, people don't really, even trauma therapists really even don't understand the impact of this. So, a lot of individuals are trying to cope their way through this the best they can. And a lot of us who've done, who've done time in solitary, who've been incarcerated, we might have sort of informally support each other. But the reality is that there's not a lot of help out there for individuals who are coming home themselves, and how to sort of attach and find support. And we've got forensic peer specialists now, and so we're getting some things in place. But the reality is that not only are the services poor inside the prison, they're also poor in the reentry process. And that's something that we really need to work on. There needs to be a lot more resources, for reentry, so that when someone is coming out of the system, we understand that they're coming home traumatized. And if we want them to be successful, and somebody asked the question in the chat about how this affects recidivism. Well, how do you think it's going to affect? It's definitely going to make it much higher, just because solitary in itself takes away your access to the things that help prevent recidivism. So of course it's going to raise the rate. And it's going to make it is. I think this is one thing that we really have to work on, is making sure the resources, not only getting rid of solitary, but also making sure that the mental health resources are there while they're in prison and when they come home, to help recover from the effects of solitary.
Someone asked about books, which no books are allowed. I remember at some point when Carrington was in the hole, they wouldn't let me send hard books, but I could send paperback books. I don't know if that's still the case.
In Pennsylvania, most of the jails let you get both paperback and hardback now. But before, when I first went in, you weren't allowed to have books. You were only allowed to have a Bible and your legal work, or Bible and Quran and legal work. That's how it was at Monohoy. And until this guy named Henry Unseld Washington won a lawsuit, and he showed and proved that that rule didn't make any sense, because they were saying that having those books was fire hazards. But they said, well, as long as they can fit inside of the box, how are they a fire hazard any more than legal work? It's crazy. But they just so that your mind won't have anything to feed off of. That's why they did that. But now you're allowed to, as far as I know, in Pennsylvania.
But that'll be one of the first things they take.
The next
Yeah, I've known lots of people that you could have all the stuff and then they just snatch it right back. I remember one time they took my Bible, and I never got it back. I got some other little whatever they had laying around from one of the chaplains who, one of the things they asked is, you get visited by the chaplains? Never. I never saw a chaplain the whole time I was in that I was in segregated housing. So I had to, so it's they'll whatever they tell you you're allowed to have, trust me, that's the first thing that they'll remove. They'll find an excuse to remove it from you. Generally it'll be allowed, but it won't be allowed for you.
Okay, the next question. In your work with advocating for more rights for individuals who are incarcerated, how are these efforts going? Do you feel like people in power are interested in rehabilitation for incarcerated people? And what are barriers to making change for people who are incarcerated? I guess we can kind of unpack and break those down. As far as in the first part of it is in your work with advocating for more rights for individuals who are incarcerated, how are those efforts going? I can just say it's a constant struggle, but we're never going to give up. That's all that's what I have to say on it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gaining some stride with it. We're having success because more people out here are waking up, and it's more people involved, and they're speaking directly about criminal justice reform. Even though the people in power don't believe in it, they know that they have to talk about it in order to just for us to even get our vote. But yeah, I believe that we're having some success. It's not an overnight thing. It's not an overnight issue because the institution of it wasn't set up overnight. It's been going on for centuries, and they monetize, commercialize it. They're making money off of it, so it's a business. So we're fighting against a machine. So, but we are having success because people's eyes are being opened up, and our issues are being talked about, and people are organizing in every state. So I call that a success. Even though we didn't reach our goal, it's a minor success. We haven't reached our ultimate goal.
I agree. It is, we progressed, I think, as we've never have before. Very good friend of mine who's also one of my cellmates behind the walls, Paulette Carrington, Miss Naomi, Siobhan Robbins, may she rest in peace, Ivory Johnson, so many other juvenile lifers that they say were never coming home. Those are men, women, and men are coming home. You know what I mean? Like she used to say back in the day, she said, this is not my home. And people used to laugh at her, right? She says, no, I'm going home one day. And like she always says, she was there for 40 years. She was there when she was 16. She got out at 40 to 16. That's how old she was when she got out. You know what I mean? And now she living her life. But she never gave up. She always said that was not her home. She said, D, I was in the wilderness for 40 years, like Jesus. But she came home. So things are definitely changing and progressing.
So as one of the people who does the legislative advocacy side of things, and who talks to them all the time, yeah, in some ways we have made a lot of strides. However, I'll tell you that the progressive-minded, want to change things folks are very much in the minority in Pennsylvania, and so we are battling a few things when it comes to reform. One, we are battling the fact that Pennsylvania's, when we talk about, it's Pittsburgh in the north, Philadelphia in the south, and Alabama in between. They were not kidding when they said that. And so what happens is we have a lot of rural communities where these prisons have been developed. Carrington talked about it. It's a money thing. When we talk about reducing the overall prison population, when we talk about improving conditions, we talk about all this, creating more reentry opportunities, creating more second chance legislation, allowing people to have more rights when they come home. There's also a machine that says, well, if you take this prison out of my community, you're going to kill my community. Or rural communities that have completely built up around prisons, to the point that it's like taking a military base out of their community. They depend on it. So that creates, a lot of this. One of the things, however, that we have been able to make inroads with a lot of conservative politicians about is because they all agree that the system costs too much. One of the things that when we talk about solitary versus general population, solitary, especially if you include the medications that they put a lot of people in solitary on for their mental health issues, solitary is almost double and sometimes more than double what it costs to have something in Gen Pop. So when we look at the amount of people in Pennsylvania that are in solitary and how much more we're spending on them as opposed to what we're spending on general population, it does get, I think as a part of our legislative stuff, we basically talked about how we could save more than $30 million a year, getting rid of solitary. And, and that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the system costs. But when you're looking at, when you're talking to people about conservatives who are, especially fiscal conservatives, who really do care about ways to reduce costs, and this is one of the things that they are starting to look at, with how much the system across the board is costing, and how, and so that kind of gives you a change. They may not care much about the human, impacts of this, but they do care about the financial impacts. And so that is, one way in which we can have conversations around that.
Yeah, I see a question here. Can you talk more about your efforts in whistleblowing, and did you receive outside support? And that was for Dana, but I think Carrington, you can talk about it too when Dana gets done.
So the whistleblowing, my outside support was actually HRC, and HRC Pittsburgh, actually. Brother Tut, Richard Carter, rest in peace, my brother Tut. He was actually a step from Philly chapter, connected with all the chapters, but somehow Pittsburgh chapter contacted me, and someone named, I remember, Amanda. I think that's how I ended up coming to meet Shandre. Then I wrote like a crazy fool. I know, like Homey County, I wrote all the different newspapers and articles, like getting it out there however way I could. Then my Church of the Overcomer, my pastor, who's a radical too, he's about this life too, Pastor Collins, he was very instrumental in helping me, him and Brother Tut, and support. And then, but what was even more powerful unto me, those outside forces were good, but like the women, like in order for certain things to transpire, like I told them, because when you would shower upstairs or downstairs, if you didn't shower upstairs, the men, as they're doing rounds, will be able to look down and see you. I thought that was disgusting. So I was like, guys, don't take no showers downstairs if you can't get upstairs. So what they did was, those who didn't have cars, or they made us creative and will block their window and just stop utilizing the downstairs showers. And just start like writing certain legislators. I remember, oh my goodness, Representative Waters, after we wrote him, he did this big probe, and a Greater Friends that said that they were going to start doing this and that and that. So we got support from, yes, it was support from within, and kept getting thrown back in the hole because of that too. But like my dad said, a lot of times when you're up against opposition and challenges, that you gotta be ready. You gotta be really ready to deal with the repercussions, if you will, or consequences. So I knew they was gonna give us some smoke because of it. Thank you. And that was it, getting thrown back in the hole.
Looks like Carrington's not there, but I was just gonna, I wanted him to talk a little bit about him and whistleblowing, because he actually got charged with the riot because he was a whistleblower. And HRC Pittsburgh did a report. We collected information from SCI dollars for a period of 1 year, and it ended up to be a 93-page report of everything that they were doing. In this report were all the names of everyone that had submitted information, and that report was submitted to different legislators, and the guards found out, and they ended up assaulting my son and other guys at SCI Dallas. Carrington, could you talk real quick about your your whistleblowing, because you did a lot, and a lot of other people too. You weren't the only one, but just talk a little bit about whistleblowing and the support you received.
Oh, well, my support was from my mom, Shandre, Delaney. My support was from
It's
Dan
me.
Lomax and Teresa came to my court hearings. They even tried to censor or one of them like, hey, stop taking pictures of us. Dan, yeah, I had a lot of support. That's what helped me in my whistleblowing efforts, even though, you know, they start coming at us with state-sponsored terrorism and counterintelligence campaigns, false charged us with riot and assaulting guards that assaulted us. And the trial went on for 7 years and it was crazy. But yeah, had a lot of good support. If I didn't have the people on the streets that I had support from and the people in there too that was standing with me, then I probably wouldn't even be alive, and I'll be in prison for 49 more years, basically life. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. We have a couple questions, and then I'm gonna go over our solidarity, not solitary campaign. Let me see what question. Oh, it's asking about re-entry for you all. So did you all want to say a little bit about your re-entry and any type of support or resources? And how long it took for, how long, they're asking how long did it take to break the imprisoned mind? Like, how long did it take? Or does it take? I'm sorry.
You know, I find myself, I have all these different negative proclivities from prison. Like Pastor Dr. Chris was saying, and Carrington was saying, it's just different things, and I have different triggers, and I can't even begin to go into that. But one thing that was imperative for me, because you've been not only victimized but traumatized in solitary confinement, I think it's important to get like me, because I'm already, they say, high sprung and off the chain. And going through this, I had like a lot of anger. So therapy, number one for me, like therapy was vital and very important. I'm sorry, my niece over here got me, I'm sorry, what was the question? Got me a little distracted with this TikTok stuff. What did you ask, Shandre?
Just asking about your wait a minute, I'm sorry.
Oh, re-entry.
The re-entry.
In 90 seconds. And while I was in there, I had some skills already, and then I just made myself more marketable. And when I came out, I just mixed the two, combined the two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'll just pass the next question. One of you, either Chris or Carrington, how do you think solitary impacts recidivism? I think Chris already talked about that. The next one is how do you think solitary confinement impacts recidivism?
Recidivism?
Yes.
I think it makes people worse. If you it depends on the individual too, but I think it definitely it makes it worse, because you got people that's coming out of jail with bottled up, whatever they got inside of them is bottled up inside of them. And when you're not having human relations and human interactions, that affects you. And you just come home, you know, like Chris spoke about it earlier, you're just coming home like a ticking time bomb. And I see guys that I know that did time, and the ones that's successful, I take my hat off to them. But it's a few that then came out here and became maniacs, you know, and it's sad. And I can't even say they're a maniac. It's just, you know, a human being after being tilted to a certain point, it's only going to be a negative result.
I think the other thing we have to consider is that besides all of those effects of solitary, the things that we know that improve recidivism rates are things that people in solitary lose. So you're not getting opportunities for education. You're not getting the visits that you would normally get. You're not participating in you don't get to participate in the programs that would help reduce, if you came with substance use issues or mental health issues, you're not getting treatment or counseling while you're in the SHU. Those things that would actually help you do better, you have less access to. So even if solitary was not actually documented torture, it would still increase recidivism, because the things that we know that decrease it, the people in solitary don't have access to. We know people who get mail do better. People who have regular visits get better. People who have particularly regular visits from their parents and clergy do better. People who have, just all of those things, those basic, that stuff has a huge impact on recidivism. Well, that's all taken away from people in solitary. So, when you're looking at those kind of things, of course it's going to just because you don't get access to the same thing that other incarcerated citizens get access to. Shandre,
I'm sorry. Yeah. I just dropped into the chat, since we only have a couple minutes left. I dropped in the chat a Google form where you can go on and put your name and your put your information, and we will I will send you the information for our Solidarity Not Solitary campaign. What we're going to do, we have 2 bills that we're working on, that have been worked on. We lost our person in the legislation, so it's gonna be a fight, but we're still gonna keep continuing trying to get these bills passed, and we're gonna need some help here and all over the state. But for those in Western Pennsylvania, if you check onto that form, I'll keep you updated. I'll also let you know about what ways can help. Also, we want to make sure everybody is signing on to for the ballot for to ban solitary at ACJ. We really need we need 27,000 signatures to get banning solitary at the Allegheny County Jail onto the ballot. Also, there's also a Breonna's law that we're trying to, let me drop into the chat. Let me drop in the petition and you have to County to do that. Sign that petition out to you. Any last words from anybody on the panel or anything to shout, whatever? Well, thanks everybody for coming to our panel. Hopefully we'll hear from you again. We'll see you again. All right, I guess that's it.
Can you hear me, Shandre?
Yeah. I can't. I can't hear.
Okay, you can't hear.
Okay, I can hear you, but someone was saying something, but it was like I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. I'm like, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were freezing somewhat for a little bit, Shandre, so it was affecting.
Oh, okay.
We heard us, and we heard you.
was just saying thanks to everybody for coming to our panel, and I dropped 2 links in the chat. One for the Solidarity Not Solitary, and one for the Allegheny County Jail ballot initiative.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Yep.
Thanks for having us. Yes.